Right. Well, let's see. What week are we in? This is. Ha ha ha. Oh, the book today is The Mannningtree Witches, another book that my dog has eaten part of. But let's see what week this is, because I don't remember. This was a book for last week, as a matter of fact, so I'm a little behind, but that's okay. I will catch up. Let's see now if I can get this to work. Um, the Mannningtree Witches is it's a novel. This is week 47, book 47. So we're close to finishing up the year of books here. Um, this is a novel by A.K. Blakemore. Let's see. That's A.K. Blakemore there. Um, A.K. Blakemore. And this is, I think, her first novel. She's written poetry and short stories and whatnot, but I believe this is her first novel, and it was published in, let's see, when that was 2021. And okay, so what you have to know about this book is something that I did not know apparently when I started reading it. When I bought it, maybe I knew, I don't remember. That was a while back. I've had it for a while. But it's a historical novel. Um, in the 1640s, a man named um, Matthew, uh, Matthew, what's his name? The Witchfinder General. Matthew, what is his name? Hopkins, maybe? Matthew Hopkins? Is it Matthew Hopkins? Um, I think it is. Let's see. Matthew Hopkins. Is it Hopkins? Witchfinder General. Yeah, Matthew Hopkins, um, the Witchfinder General, who goes around England basically accusing women of witchcraft. And his career basically gets started in a place called Mannningtree. And this is a fictional account of the lives of those women, particularly a young woman named Rebecca West, who is the daughter, or is it Rachel West? I think it's Rebecca. Yeah, Rebecca West. Sorry, I'm not big great with names, as you probably know, um, particularly not names in fiction. But so, um, Rebecca West is the daughter of the Beldam West, who is one of the seven, I think seven, Mannningtree Witches. And all of these people are historically real, but their exact fate is not always known. Now, those witches that were killed, who died, they're known. But Rebecca West, her fate is not known because she disappears from the record. And exactly what her role is in the entire event is also apparently historically not clear. So, A.K. Blakemore has used a lot of license in the creation of her main character, who is this Rebecca. And okay, so what happens? These women are just going about their lives. They are mostly older, they're mostly widowed, they're poor, they're uneducated. They spend a lot of time what we might call gossiping, backbiting between each other and other people in the community. Some of them are busybodies, kind of watch what other people do. You know, think of all the stereotypes of this kind of woman. And these are the kinds of women that are there in Mannningtree. And something happens where a young boy is doing something stupid. Yeah, he's fishing with the wrong thing, or he's making a mess, or whatever. I don't remember precisely what he's doing wrong. And these women are having a little gossipy session, uh, 20 feet away, 30 feet away, whatever. And one of them sort of yells at the kid, like, that's a don't do that, that's dangerous, or don't do that, that's stupid, or whatever. And he says something like, mind your own business, you old biddy, or something. Anyway, so a little minor confrontation happens. And one of the women, Beldam, Wes, goes up to the boy, grabs him by the ear, and pulls him away from whatever he's doing, to sort of basically scold him. And the boy happens to slip and skin his leg. And of course, the mother, who up to this point had been, noticeably absent from taking care of her son, suddenly appears and gets all upset. Okay. And then there's a woman who is like heavily pregnant and going around showing off her pregnant belly and all this stuff. And, there's apparently another woman who really likes this bonnet that one of the women has. And so there's these various little, what normally be in normal circumstances, relatively petty little things. And they all get blown up in various ways by an hysteria. Now, to understand a little bit of this hysteria, you have to know that this was the time period when Oliver Cromwell and the New Model Army are fighting against the forces of King Charles II for. It's the middle of that revolution that happens where the Puritans take over England. And so there's a big emphasis on trying on this, Puritan aesthetic reality. And Mannningtree happens to be part of the center of this sort of Puritan kind of movement. And um, because there's war going on, supply lines are being disrupted. I think there was even at the time, totally unrelated to the political events, as often happens in these kinds of situations, a drought or a pestilence in the crops. This happens a lot when bad things happen in history. Sort of a perfect storm of natural causes and man-made causes come together to cause calamity. And I believe that's partially what's going on here. So a lot of the able-bodied men, or in fact most of the able-bodied men, are gone, and these women are left to their own devices. And these women are not stupid people, but they're also not necessarily capable of running an entire town without some of the expertise and knowledge that the men have. Remember, these women oftentimes are uneducated. They haven't learned many skills outside of, quote, womanly skills, like they know how to do the laundry and they know how to cook and they know how to do those kind of things. But there are certain skills in the village that maybe they're not as adept at because they just never learned. They were never taught. They were never expected to know. And so this lack of these men, this food supply chain disruption, the lack of money, because what resources there are trying to go to the army so they can win this thing. There's even more poverty here than there was before, and people are disgruntled and they're paranoid because of all the things going on, because there's strong focus on, the end times, on spiritual warfare, which is how this whole project is being sold to the populace, why the Puritans are doing this, um, to be more godly and put the nation right with God and things of that nature. This may have some resonance with today's politics in 2025, but that's another story. Uh, so all that's going on, and enter Matthew Hopkins. So, was Matthew Hopkins a true believer, or did he exploit the situation for power? Historical opinion is divided, and this book makes no real strong commitment either way. It does show that he is a relatively pious and fervent believer in his theological views, but whether or not those theological views are being exploited by him for his own benefit, or whether he truly believes these things and isn't out to exploit people, is unclear. But in any case, he starts going around accusing these women of witchcraft, and eventually they get thrown in prison, and there's a horrible, horrible, horrible like 50 pages or so of them in prison. And then Rebecca West is basically offered this choice. She can betray all of the older women and make up a nice, juicy, satanic story and get all those women hung, and she'll be okay, or she can go back with them and suffer the fate that they're all eventually going to face. And that's the thing. After being in jail for about a year, they realize that there really is no hope, that it's a kangaroo court, it's a railroaded system. They cannot prove their innocence because, get this, get this, a witch can be in two places at once. So let's say something happened on, what is today? Today is October 8th. Let's say something happened today, Wednesday, October 8th at noon, and you, the accused, definitely were not there. You have evidence you were elsewhere. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because as a witch, you could be two places at once. So you could have done it and been at the same time. So um, it's a very interesting novel. It basically gives agency and voice to these women in this patriarchal society who didn't have any voice, who the historical record basically blanked. And it's interesting because Blakemore doesn't make these women like super progressive beyond their time. Like Rebecca West, she is raised in society where she wants to be a good Christian. That is what she wants to be. She wants to be a good woman. She wants to do and have the kinds of values that women in this society would have. So Blakemore does not make her like some impossible, 20th century feminist stuck in the 1640s. No, she makes her a woman of the 1640s who wants to have her own voice and her own agency and not be subjected to the whims and caprices of a patriarchal society. But nonetheless, shares many of the values of that society. You know, um, she does think that, being immodest is a bad thing. She has a very dim view of premarital sex. Um, and those kind of things. So I found that very, very interesting and powerful that Blakemore did not make these women impossible. She made them very possible in their time period, but showed that society still wasn't giving them the chance to be themselves, wasn't giving them an open field to do what they want. The book has a lot of very flowery and poetic language. Um, to be honest, I found some of this to be kind of overwritten. Maybe I'm just used to writers who aren't going to quite go to that extreme with some things, but I felt that there are places that were overwritten. That said, I liked it. The sentences were still good, even where overwritten, because the language and the metaphorical language and the description is still interesting. It's just, you know, there's a kind of slowness to the plot. And that would be the one flaw. There's kind of a slowness to the plot in some places. Um, but overall, absolutely a very interesting book. If you're interested in witchcraft, not, not like Lovecraft, not like Crowley, not like Wicca, not real witchcraft. But if you're interested in the historical reality of what the witchcraft trials were about and how witches were perceived and how women were accused of being witches and things of that nature, I think this is definitely something to read. Um, I would definitely suggest reading some of the history of the real witch trials in companion or afterwards, as context for some of what happens here. Not because I think this book is unrealistic. I think it's actually about as realistic as one can be, writing about characters who, people who existed, but we know little about them. I think this is about as a realistic depiction of who what these lives probably were, as she could possibly get. But we don't always see things the way that people see in these books. So understanding a little bit more about what they're doing and why they're doing the things they're doing, some of which is explained, some of which is not, might be helpful for many readers. So definitely, The Mannningtree Witches by A.K. Blakemore, definitely worth reading. Um, a very good book, but despite its short page length, I thought it was just a little bit of a slow read, but still very good. See you later.